Hello, friends on the internet. I am just going to make this recording because I'm bored and friendless and have nothing better to do. And I've listened to the June the King podcast about Lily Orchard, Lily Peet. I'll just call them Pete for ease of speaking, I guess. And apparently they wrote a long list of writing tips, and I like writing. I'm not great at it, but I've written some stuff. So I'll just go through this list until I get bored and comment on the tips. So the first tip is don't worry about spoilers. If your story is good, spoilers aren't going to make it any less enjoyable. If spoilers make a story less enjoyable, that just means you were relying on cheap shock value as a shortcut. I don't really have a whole ton to say with that. I feel like spoilers have their place in some works. Mysteries are a big thing. Not just like Agatha Christie, whatever that one is. The Train. Was Agatha Christie The Train? I have to look that up now. Yes, Murder on the Orient Express is Agatha Christie. Right, and so there's a mystery in that. In the series Made in Abyss, the mystery of the abyss is one of the driving forces in the story. The mystery of what happened to Rico's mom is another one. There's a lot of mystery and spoiler that, while I don't think necessarily knowing the spoil would make it less enjoyable, because when you go through something that the twist, you can see if it's well written, things that foreshadow it, and you can have the joy of sort of like seeing things you didn't see when you saw it the first time, or if you unfortunately had something spoiled, you can sort of pick up on things and be like, oh, I know what's going on. And that can still be enjoyable. So I think that's a bit of a dud for number one. If I were Pete, I would have started with something maybe a little more substantial. Number two, the middle point of a story is the best time to get a main couple together. Are you working on a 5-season show? Put your main couple together halfway through season 3. Oh, so literally the midpoint. The finale is the worst time because we don't get any time to enjoy the payoff. Again, I don't think this is true, right? I mean, some romances do well to have time to grow and let us see how things develop. Excuse me. Some stories are about working towards getting together. The one that comes to mind off the top of my head is Princess Bride, where Wesley and the female lead, let me look up her name, female lead, Princess Bride. I cannot for the life of me remember her name. Oh yes, Buttercup. Yes, Princess Buttercup. And Wesley, they get together at the end of the movie, and the entire movie is sort of how events are conspiring to keep them apart, and through the power of true love, they are able to come together, and it's wonderful. Um, I I don't know. If a 5-season show, I don't really watch many television shows, but I think that even, for example, Gundam, the original Gundam, you can argue whether or not Char and Amuro are explicitly like gay for each other. But even if they aren't, main couple, it doesn't say anything about it being a romantic couple. Um, and Char and Amuro are not able to reconcile their differences, and that's a big part of the plot and Char's counterattack and how things go in through the entire story. And so if they somehow, if in Zeta Gundam they just made up and were like working together for the rest of the series, it would totally change the entire work. So again, I don't really know what Pete's talking about. Number 3, friends to lovers is greater to or greater than enemies to lovers. Well, I just talked about Char and Amuro, but every time they say to end that quote, or better yet, enemies to friends to lovers. So how is enemies to friends to lovers not enemies to lovers? That doesn't that so what Pete is saying here is that if you have friends becoming lovers, that's better than enemies becoming lovers. But if enemies become friends who become lovers, then that is superior than just friends to lovers. So their actual full, I guess, comparison would be enemies to friends to lovers is greater than friends to lovers is greater than enemies to lovers, which I can see I can see where they're coming from. If they make the jump directly from enemies to lovers, then maybe it feels a little unnatural. Um, Other than that, I feel like if they're enemies, then they do have sort of that back and forth relationship. Again, I'm not going to go to Char and Amuro every single time I need an example, but they have that chemistry together that expresses itself regardless of whether the relationship is antagonistic, platonic, or romantic. And I don't think it's necessary for all relationships to follow the same paths in order to be valuable or interesting. All right, number 4, victims of abuse moving away from the negative impact of their abuse i.e., Zuko, and becoming healthier are not redemption arcs. What? Victims of abuse moving away from the negative impacts of their abuse and becoming healthier. So I guess what they're saying is if they distance themselves from ways that their abuse made them a worse person and focus on becoming a better person, that's not redemption. I think maybe the part being unsaid here is that there is no making amends, I guess. There's no attempt to repair what negative impacts they themselves may have put upon others. Um, but I would be curious to hear what this person's idea of an a redemption arc would be, if not in some way related to this. And Zuko particularly, I think, does have a redemption arc. I don't know how you could you could come to the conclusion that he isn't redeemed himself as much as he would have been able to by the end of the story. And even into Legend of Korra, he has like he's a good person. He is redeemed, I think. So not the best example. So whatever. Heroes refusing to kill villains who have shown to be actively trying to murder people isn't noble, it's enabling. Mm, I'm not entirely sure what they're getting at with this one. Um, it, again, I guess I would say that it depends on the context and the story you're trying to tell. Um, right, if you're trying to tell a chivalrous knightly story and you want to uphold that sort of more traditional vibe and maybe these days antiquated idea of honor and nobility, then I think it definitely makes sense for that to be what happens, where the hero shows himself to be stronger than the villain insofar as he is able to resist the beastly urge to give in to murderous impulse and instead pursue some other way of fixing the situation. Who knows? I mean, I think this is a dumb point. It's in some cases maybe yeah, it can be enabling to not kill someone if they go on to be able to kill a bunch of other people, but again, I don't think that reflects, excuse me, I don't think that would reflect poorly upon the person who chose to stay their hand. It's not their fault mass murderer decided to go be a mass murderer, right? So I think that's extremely judgy to say that it's enabling. 6. Two women kissing in the last episode of a show after 4 to 5 seasons of trying to murder each other isn't quoth unquote revolutionary. It's fetishized abuse and violence. What? He's sorry, they are referring to a specific thing, I imagine, but I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what it having to do with being two women means anything. I mean, if you have two men or a woman and a man doing this, it would still right. It would still be fetishized abuse and violence if you want to come at it from that angle. This reminds me of that earlier point, where they don't like the enemies becoming lovers. But what if 4 to 5 seasons? What if 3.5 seasons were to go by of them trying to murder each other? Then they become friends and then they become lovers and kiss in the last episode? Would that be acceptable? I don't think it's helpful to put these sorts of labels on vague things like this. It could be written such that it fetishizes abuse and violence, and it can also be written such that it doesn't do that. So I think this is very black and white thinking. Number 7, Twitter is not an appropriate place to reveal story details. The appropriate place is in the work itself. Again, no idea what the hell this is referencing. Maybe they mean like as supplementary information that might be important to the plot, but is left out of the work for some reason. I guess it's such a weak point. This is so irrelevant to most people who write things. It's just, excuse me, We're at point number 7, and it feels like we're already getting to filler. 8,000. When a character's body count is over 10,000. Okay, so Pete is talking about how many people they have murdered. When a character's body count is over 10,000 innocent lives, then that character is no longer redeemable. I think that's a load of shit. Like Ender from Ender's Game. How many innocent people did he kill? And yet, I don't think anybody would heavily fault Ender for not catching on quicker to what situation he was really in. And even then, the rest of the series is sort of Ender struggling to come to terms and seek redemption. And because Scott Card is a Christian, I don't remember exactly, but I think he ends up feeling atoned. Certainly, he, in Speaker for the Dead, tries. And there are those trees. That's all I remember. Those books were decades ago for me. Well, actually, let's see. I'm 30 right now. Decades would be 10, 20 years. So I would have been 10 years old. 10 years, I would have been in like 4th or 5th grade. Yeah, that checks out. Tip 8 does not. Oh, yes, that body count does not apply to characters for whom making them the villain was a stupid, idiotic idea? What? At that point, it's just character derailment. What the fuck does that even mean? Making them a villain was a stupid idea? I don't understand. Like, like, is this person saying that they were a good person who was framed as a villain, and they were just arbitrarily in the text made to kill a large number of people, and but that's not who they are in terms of their behavior? I feel like if that's what Pete's getting at right here, I feel like they could word that so much better. Like, don't, try to be aware of any incongruity between described acts of a character and how a character actually acts in the text, without some sort of explanation for any differences, right? That's a much easier to understand and easier to apply tip. So, let's see, number 10, 10%. Fucking Christ. Everything in a story is there because the creator wished it to be there. Trying to explain away bigoted story decisions using world building is a fallacy because you put it in there to begin with. I don't know what they mean by bigoted story decisions. And what fallacy are they even talking about? Like saying, oh, this happened because this is the way the world is. And Pete thinks they're being big brained by being like, well, actually, you made the world like that. And it's like, well, yeah, the author made the world like that in order to illustrate some facet of human experience. Again, I don't know what kind of works this is directed at. I feel like what little I do know of Pete is that they are quite enamored with childish things and perhaps children as well. But I mean, have they ever really like engaged with more adult media like books or even some movies? Like, what are you talking about? I really don't understand where they are coming from on this. So, number 11, don't pair adults with minors. That's pedophilia. What? What? I mean, oh, who uh, who needed to have this said? Like, no shit. But again, I would say that, and this is part of the like writing a real work that deals with actual issues. If the work is going to deal with pedophilia and maybe the impacts thereof, I mean, you can kind of have a tough time doing that if you don't show an adult being paired with a minor in order to demonstrate the negative effects of that. So again, I feel like this is a really stupid, on its face thing to say. Because in the situation where it's self-explanatory, like, yeah, of course you wouldn't fucking pair adults with minors. Like, most people know that generally, and if a work is dealing with that issue specifically, then who are you to say don't do that? Like, let people write what they want. And even it can be used uncomfortably. It can be used to make the reader very uncomfortable. One of, if not my favorite book, The Warrior Prophet by R. Scott Bakker, unfortunately ends with rape aliens interrogating like a rural village, the men, women, and children. And I'm not going to go into it more than that, but you can put two and two together, and it's very uncomfortable to read. But that's because that's the point. It's illustrating the way these characters, these aliens, and their whole posse. I can't think for words, but the way that they are so different from humanity, and in the way that they approach morality and how they work, and that all ties in with Backer's stuff. I won't go into that right now because Backer is just in another realm compared to Pete. But suffice it to say, I think 11 is true when it's true and not when it's not. Like, again, evaluate on a case by case basis. Just because it is pedophilia does not mean you should not depict it. Just like, obviously, don't depict it in like a positive, affirming light if you don't want to make the reader extremely uncomfortable and stop reading. For example, there's a famous fan fiction authored perhaps by Tara Callie, a close friend of Pete, if not Pete themselves, um, called Stockholm, which is very long, twice as long as the Lord of the Ring trilogy. And in it, there is a lot of very explicit pairing older characters with much disturbingly younger characters. And so it's strange for Pete to be putting this rule here considering their past works. But maybe they learned. Maybe they didn't know that you shouldn't do that. They did it. They did it for a trilogy times two worth of writing and then realized, wait a second, that's pedophilia. All right, number 12. Don't sexualize teenage characters. Dude, where are you coming from on this? Like, what's going on where you're bringing this up again right after you just brought that up? And again, sexualizing in the way of like Cuties, that Netflix movie, disgusting. Sexualizing in the case where it displays teenagers having a sexuality, I think that's normal. I know I had a sexuality as a kid, and I, you know, I paired myself with adults, and I was a minor, and so what? Could I not depict that in a story that I'm writing? If I were like writing an autobiography, I just couldn't write that. That's stupid. Um, but I do agree generally with the vibe of don't sexualize teenage characters in a way that is like gratuitous or meant to titillate the reader, because that's weird. Number 13. Oh god, more. Don't make up weird anime excuses for sexualizing teenage characters. I feel like that's just a corollary to number 12. Actually 1000, fusion, age of consent in X countries, blah blah blah. Yeah, dude, whatever, we get it. You totally don't think about that stuff all the time. 14. Making a quoth unquote metaphor for gay, trans, ace, rep is always inherently inferior to just making a gay, trans, ace character. It's such an absolute way to phrase it. I don't think that's true. I mean, it can be a useful metaphor, and there are aspects of being gay or trans or ace that might be expressed metaphorically in order to help people who have not experienced those things understand them, or as a way for the author to sort of abstract their feelings and process them through some other context that might be easier for them to work with. I think this is a stupid rule. Number 15. If there are humans in your story, restricting gay, trans, ace, rep to the non-human characters makes you a huge turd. No, I don't think that's true. Right? Imagine if there were some science fiction. Oh, let's look at Mass Effect. There's that alien race where it's entirely lesbians. And I don't think they had gay in Mass Effect until like Mass Effect 3. So, not that great. I don't understand that. What if there's like one human character and they're meant to be a stand-in or like audience surrogate, and it's just stupid. It's so stupid. Number 16, if the only gay man in your work is Lily misspelled foppish as Faupish instead of Foppish. Here's a tip: use a spell checker. You're a huge turd. Why do these things have to say something about the writer being a turd or a bad person? Why not say like this is why this thing is bad rather than this is why you doing this thing means you're a bad person? It's so unnecessarily judgmental. And what's wrong with the only gay character being a foppish diva? There are foppish diva gay men. Like, what if it's a small story with not that many characters and the gay character is a foppish diva? That can work. I think I think it's stupid to just arbitrarily restrict yourself like this. 17. If the only lesbian, oh man, somebody's going to be a turd at the end of this. If the only lesbian in your work is an abusive rageaholic with vague angst issues and a codependent relationship to a protagonist, you are a huge turd. Why? Tell me why. I don't understand why that's bad. Like, those are real relationship dynamics. There are people like that. Why would you not why would you restrict yourself to not engaging with that arbitrarily because it makes you a turd for some unspecified reason? Number 18, if your only non-binary character is a non-human shapeshifter, you're a huge turd. Again, why the turd? Why is the author a turd? Maybe it's a way to explore what non-binary means in a manner that's greater than just the implications of gender. Maybe non-binary in terms of whatever the fuck, it can be an interesting way to explore the human condition. Stop being a dumbass. Like, oh, if you do this thing I don't like, you're a huge turd. Pete is just maybe also a coprophiliac. Who knows? 19. If you're only autistic oh my god. What is this guy? What is with this person and their fixation on only X type of character is a stereotype? Then if that's what you're getting at here, just say if your token character is a stereotype, you're a huge turd. Say that, because this is reading like filler. But to get at it, if your only autistic character is an ethically challenged number fetishist, you're a huge turd. I disagree. I think that can be an interesting way to represent it. Just like have an autist on hand to be like, yeah, that's cool. Or like, no, that doesn't seem accurate to my experiences. Let me explain what it would actually be like. Right? Why do you have to like put restrictions on yourself? If your only black character is a volatile, hyper angry brute, you're a huge turd. Again, don't restrict yourself arbitrarily. This is my tip. Don't restrict yourself arbitrarily on the basis of how you think people will perceive you, or what moral framework you cling to, because that's just going to deaden your writing. It's going to close doors, and it's going to turn off avenues that you might be able to walk down and explore something interesting or difficult. If you just keep everything as sanitized as possible, then there's nothing. There's nothing to eat, I guess. If the only black woman, oh god, he just talked about black people. If the only black woman in your cast barely gets any screen time except to be fetishized or fits Rule 20, okay, so he's making it a subset to Rule 20. You're a huge turd. Who fetishizes, like, maybe it's just the media I consume, but I guarantee black women are not fetishized by and large in works that I am exposed to. So I don't know what the hell Pete's talking about right here. Number 22. If the only trans woman, oh, they put a space in there for some reason, in your cast is a drag queen in all but name, you're a huge turd. Why? Why? There's no reason. 23. If you force a woman to kiss her abuser, you're a huge turd. Is this going back to the like, oh, but you chose to make it happen? It's like you can choose to show things that are bad experiences because that's what gives weight and drama and grit and realness. What in the fuck are you talking about? Don't show bad things or you're a bad person. Don't think or write or depict wrong think because you're bad for just being able to think that. This sounds like a really, really guilty conscience trying to prove to everybody that they really know what's good and just. So again, fuck that. 24. If you sideline every non-white character in your cast to focus on a white boy with anger issues and a tendency toward hostility getting a redemption arc, hey, that sounds like something Pete could be looking into, you know? Anger issues and a tendency towards hostility. Jeez. Um, you're a huge turd. Why? What if you want to focus on that character? Okay. Well, what if you want to focus on a character with anger issues and a tendency towards hostility? According to these rules, you can't do it if they're not white because that's racist. So if you want to have a character who gets angry, they have to be white, but then you can't focus on them. Oh, this is so stupid. Oh my god. 25. Justifying horny armor designs or horny clothing designs with sexual agency makes you a huge turd. Why? Characters don't have sexual agency, made them that way as a justification. Go fuck yourself. What if you want to portray a character who expresses their sexual agency in that way? It's stupid. Related to the above, if your justification is to just be honest and say you like ogling, see, that's interesting. To just be honest and say you like ogling sexy characters. I think that points to the author of this, Pete, using rhetoric to cloak their real motivations. Because justifying blah 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 horny clothing with sexual agency really sounds like something Pete might come up with. Maybe not exactly, but they could definitely use some seemingly feminist jargon to justify shit when, if they were to be honest, it's because they like ogling women, right? And and so I think this 25 and 26 is really just telling on themselves. You're still a huge turd, but less of a turd than above. Whatever. Characters can be sexy. Whatever. You know, hot dudes, hot women. People like attractive things. Whatever. 27. Don't worry about not having everything planned out beforehand. No writer or creator plans everything beforehand. What? And the ones who say they do are filthy liars. What's with the mean words? Writers have at best 1 to 2 story beats? What? 1 to 2 story beats. They are determined to include everything else is by the seat of their pants. On what scale are we talking? Like, are we talking about in one scene? Is there 1 or 2 beats that they want to include, and they'll just sort of like feel the framework of the scene as to where those beats are going to come in, or do they mean like in the entirety of the story, say like a novel, in the entirety of the novel, does the author let's say 200-page novel, a short book, does the author go in with only 1 to 2 story beats and everything else is quote unquote by the seat of their pants? I think that is extremely stupid. I think that is very, very, very poorly, ironically, very poorly thought out. I think this entire list perhaps is evidence why you maybe should worry about planning things beforehand. For example, I'm in the process of working on a visual novel, and again, I've not gotten to the point where everything is planned out, but I have a pretty good idea of how things are going and going to go. I have ideas for scenes and how they fit into the framework that I've already constructed. And I just don't understand. Is Pete suggesting you just write and eventually get to the place you want to go without thinking of how you get there? I just don't understand what they're trying to communicate. If it works for Pete, that's great. All indications point towards that not being the case. So, 28. Don't try and quote unquote do what Avatar did, quote unquote. You can't. Even the people who made Avatar can't make another show do what Avatar did. I mean, and if they are saying specifically to make a show exactly like Avatar that deals with the exact same themes and roughly the same length with the same vibe and interesting world building and characters and all that, maybe they're right, right? Like maybe the better message is like don't don't try and make something somebody else has made. I like make your own thing. I just don't get it. Um but again, interesting that this is another example of children's media that Pete is bringing up. Very interesting. Oh dear. All right, give me just one moment here. I have to look something up. All right. Next, 29. Low stakes interpersonal conflict will always be more satisfying in the long run than high stakes saving the world. What in the fuck is that even? Why not have both? Oh dear me. Give me just one moment here. I have to deal with some janitor jannying all over the place. So let me just clear that history, turn this off. All right, I'm back. So, interpersonal conflicts will always be more satisfying than high stakes saving the world. Why not both? That's stupid. And what the fuck is Friends? My favorite anime. I'm so out of touch. I know vaguely Friends is a thing, but isn't it from like the 90s? And even my favorite anime have strong interpersonal stories. So I just don't understand it. Is Pete saying that slice of life is superior? Maybe in accomplishing some things, but not in accomplishing others. Is satisfaction determined by popularity? I don't understand what they're getting at. 30. Choose whether you are a comedy or a drama at the start and stick to it. Go fuck yourself. Don't make a comedy and turn it into a drama later on. That just annoys people. Why not have elements of both? Why does everything have to be... Is Pete autistic? Why does everything have to be categorized and put in little boxes? Just write. Just make what you're making and let it be what it is. 31. World building is like salt. A pinch can make it better, 10 cups of it will not. That's stupid. It totally depends, right? Like fucking Lord of the Rings. Beautiful work. World building, the entire I feel like the entire point of Lord of the Rings was just for Tolkien to spurg about linguistics. He was like, man, I have this really cool language. I guess I should make a world that it exists in and tell a story so people can be exposed to it. World building can be super interesting. I don't know. So that's just a stupid take. Obviously, if all you do is world building, like for example Dark Souls, where it's just a bunch of lore and not a bunch of story, I can understand that. But when story and world building overlap, I think that's great. It's wonderful. 32. Character should always come before everything else. Again, I'm not so sure entirely what they mean by this. Like what do you define as a character, right? Can the world be a character, or is that too much world building? Generally, I would say that I care a lot about characters, and I do think character interactions are very important. And it depends on what story you're writing. So I would not say that as an absolute statement. 33. The protagonist should be a protagonist, not just a vessel for the antagonist to hog the story. If you're going to make a villain the protagonist, just open with that. What? I don't know. I feel like there's plenty of stories that were fine where the antagonist like sort of stole the spotlight. That doesn't need to be bad. You can have protagonists who aren't good people. I don't know what Pete thinks antagonist means or protagonist, right? A villain is not necessarily a protagonist or an antagonist. They're just an archetype. I don't get it. So, 34. Perspective shifts are a staple of storytelling. Having only one perspective isn't a stylistic choice, it's just crap. What? uh, that stylistic choice can be an integral part of the story. Generally, I like stories where there are viewpoints from numerous characters, but having a fixed viewpoint is a tool that a writer has in their toolbox. It can it affects the story, it affects the mood of the work, it narrows the field of view, and it can be, for example, in horror stories, if you only have the view of one character, then you are much more susceptible to that character's um, unreliability, right? An unreliable narrator. That problem is sort of mitigated if you have like five narrators. Even if they're all unreliable, you'll be getting enough information from all of them where you can sort of piece together an idea of like what's actually happening. If you just have one narrator, then that removes anything else, and you know, uh, maybe some like Goosebumps, might be Pete's speed. Goosebumps does that a lot, where the forced perspective of just one character hides important details that only you find out in like the last line of the last chapter. And that's just a trite example, but there's so many examples of that. I don't know, it's just stupid. All right, 35. I might make it to 50. I'm probably not making it to 100 because there's way too many of these and they're all stupid. If you're making a cartoon, hire writers. What's with this fixation on cartoons? Don't just have your storyboarders write the story. That's not what they're there for. Artists draw, writers write. Artists cannot just take over for the writers? What? What? Again, this is autism. This is, if it is this, it must be this in this box. And if it's this, it must be this in this box. What? Artists can draw, but artists can also write. Writers can write, but they can also draw. They can also play instruments. A musician can also weave rugs. Whatever. It's so stupid to arbitrarily restrict yourself. If you want to do something that's visual and um, involves writing or mixed media, do it. Don't say, oh, I'm just a writer. Woe is me. I can only write. That's just stupid. Um, so stupid. And what about manga or anime, right? Where a lot of the time the writer and the artist are the same, at least in some level of the process. Um, 36 related to rule 2, will they, won't they? Will they, won't they, isn't a fun story. It's just addiction peddling. We need to stop pretending Ross Rachel was good storytelling and learn to appreciate Chandler, Monica, and Dewey Rachel. I don't know who any of those characters are, what that's referencing. Will they, won't they? It can be not great, but like again, why say never? That's arbitrarily restricting yourself. Just go for it. 37. Romance trope but gay is not an absolute rule to live by. Well, I guess romance trope isn't an absolute rule to live by. Why would you live by tropes? Just write. If She Ra taught us anything, it's that gay Raylo, I don't know what that means, was not actually an improvement. On what? Straight Raylo? Who is straight Raylo? This person. 38. Someone on this hell site, presumably being Twitter, once made the remark, we need more lesbian non-con because purity is born. Who gives a shit? It's Twitter. Who gives a fuck? And 90% this lesbian has a penis. So, double who gives a fuck. 39. Women who fetishize abuse, Raylos, Catradoras, Kigos, etc., presented as something feminist and paint detractors as misogynists are gaslighting you. Don't listen to them. I I don't know anything about those characters. Kigos looks like it's written as a ship name. I know nothing about either of those characters or the ship it's referring to. Toxic relationships exist. I don't know. I don't know what they're even getting at with this. What do you mean when you say fetishize abuse? What abuse? How is it fetishized? See me after class. 40. If abuse fetishists are giving you shit for not caving to their demands, just block them. Don't argue with them. Don't debate them. Don't treat them with good faith. Just block them and go on your day with your day. I have no idea what this is referencing, to the point that I can't even make an informed statement on it. I don't understand it. 41. Rape victims are not villains and should never be written as villains? What? Don't be like Blizzard Entertainment? Well, that if that were its own tip, I would agree with that one wholesale. But what? Rape victims can totally be villains and could be written as villains. Mine, not should be. But I don't know what Blizzard has to do with that specifically. However, I will say a lot of child abusers were abused. Does that mean that they're not villains, or we shouldn't acknowledge they exist? I don't understand. I don't get it. It costs $0 to not be a misogynistic pig. Don't know how that's relevant either. Excuse me. I understand most rape victims are women, but not all of them, and so it's a little weird to say misogynistic. 42. If straight men really hate a certain character, but lesbians love them, there's a 90% chance that is your best character. Dude, what the fuck are you talking about? First off, I can't think of a character like this where where lesbians really like them but straight men hate them. I can't think of a single character like this. If lesbians love a character, normally straight men love them too because they both love women and they find characters, there's an overlap in interests. I don't get it. I don't get what they're getting at here. And who gives a shit if lesbians love a character and straight men don't? By the way, keep in mind Pete thinks lesbians can have a cock. So just they're the same picture at this point for this critique. If straight men really hate a certain character, but straight men who wear skirts love them, that's really what Pete means. Uh, I, I just 100% don't get what the fuck this is even remotely talking about. 43. If one of your writers believes Simon from Infinity Train was misunderstood and did nothing wrong. I have no idea who Simon is, what Infinity Train is. Is it like Galaxy Express 39? And Grace is a villain. That writer should be fired immediately. Go fuck yourself. 44. The best solution to a love triangle is polyamory. What in the fuck is this? Is this a. No, polyamory is abusive. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh man. 45. If you have a male character who actually shows respect and admiration to a woman, and some of your viewers call that character a simp, there is a 90% chance you have a good character. That's not what a simp is, though. Or you've written a character who is a simp. But that doesn't mean that they're a good character. A simp is still a misogynistic man insofar as he thinks caping for a woman is going to get him sex or reciprocation. I mean, it's white knighting. So, whatever. 46. Mary Sue is not a real criticism. What the fuck? It's thinly veiled misogyny? What? No. Always disregard it? No. Don't make your characters like super good at everything self inserts. You don't want to Mary Sue. You don't want to Gary Stew. You don't want any of that. 47. Emotional vulnerability does not make a female character anti-feminist. Wow. Fucking finally. 47 points in, and we have hit something where it's like, okay, this is reasonable. Jeez. Followed followed immediately by goblins are inherently anti-Semitic. I think as a blanket rule that's stupid, and it's kind of rude to be like, wow, those ugly creatures, those are Jews, aren't they? Oh my goodness. No, I don't think goblins are inherently anti-Semitic. I think they have the potential, like any other creature, to maybe be used as an anti-Semitic um, icon or stand-in or whatever the word is. But that's pretty funny. 49. If you're, it was particularly funny because I was like, oh, finally we're getting somewhere. And then immediately straight back to the retarded takes. Oh, sorry if my voice is flagging right now. Holy shit, almost an hour and I'm at the halfway point. I'm gonna hit 50 and then hit myself in the head with a claw hammer because I can't take any more. 49. If your first thought when told about a bigoted trope, quote unquote bigoted, bury your gays, goblins. Okay, so this Pete spends way too much time on TV tropes, I think, and watching children's shows instead of actually engaging with books or other media, poetry, art, or creating something. I think they just have brain rot. Excuse me. Anyway, if your first thought when told about a quote unquote bigoted trope is to try and figure out how to quote unquote do it well, you are a huge turd again. Why? Who is missing the point again? Oh, it's not that these tropes aren't quote unquote done well, it's that they're done too much. So, I don't know what they mean by that. I feel like, again, case by case basis. How is this work using this? What is being done? What is being said? I think it's stupid to generalize like this. Um, excuse me. Let's see what's next. 50. The last for now. I might just skim through the others and say something if I feel like it. Writing a relationship based on a quote unquote dynamic or trying to get a particular trope, enemies to lovers, into the story is a bad decision. What? Writing a relationship based on a dynamic? I'm having trouble understanding what's wrong with that. Do you not want to have dynamics between your characters? When you're writing characters, do you not think of the dynamics that would exist between the different people and who they are, their personalities, their positions, how they would interact? Maybe Pete means that you shouldn't start with a dynamic and then write characters from that. I think that's stupid. You can do it that way if you really have a dynamic in mind that you want to examine. You can use that as the seed from which everything else grows, and it'll work out fine. Provided you like do it well, but I feel like that's normal, right? If you don't do it well, then it's not going to be good. Oh, who would have thought? 51. Stupid. 52. Stupid. I'm just going to say stupid if these. Oh, related to the above, every headcanon is valid, should never leave your mouth. Go fuck yourself. If you're writing something, you have no say over what fans do or think in their head. Why would you have authority to say, no, you in your head cannot think that thing? Because that's how you get pedophiles and fascists in your fan base. What? What? Who cares? Who cares who's a fan of your work? I mean, like, I don't like pedophiles, but like, if they like my work, I'm just gonna be like, okay, go stand in that corner, like, and make sure it's not 500 feet or less from a school, because I don't want the cops showing up. But like, and don't bring any kids with you. But I don't give a shit if somebody likes it or what they think of it in their head. Who cares? Next. Stupid. 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 Stupid and gaslighting. Stupid. 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 Oppressed people fighting against their oppressors are not villains. No, I don't care if you think they went too far. Not all those who respond with violence are wrong, and not all those who preach nonviolence are right to do so. Again, subjective, very preachy. Just kill yourself, Pete. Stupid. 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 What? The best potential romantic partner for a character is his or her best friend. They're best friends for a reason. That's very, very, very slippery, slopey ground there, Pete. What if the best friend isn't into them like that? You can't just ham fist it because you want it. Terrible. I don't want X character to be defined by her relationships is a stupid philosophy to have. Everyone is defined by their relationships. That's how human beings work. Stupid, stupid, stupid. 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 Oh, 71. The only people who think boob armor makes sense are people who are people who have never touched a boob. Pete's including this just to let you know. Pete has touched a boob. What a load of shit. 72, stupid. Stupid. Really, really stupid. Want an easy way to become more accustomed to diverse casts? What if I don't? Limit your straight, white, cis characters to one of each. There can be 3 characters for each trait or pack it all into one character. No. Shut the fuck up. Stop making arbitrary limits on what can or cannot be written. Stupid again. Stupid again. And again, people of color and LBGTB people are allowed to just exist. Don't feel like you have to cover bigotry because they're in the story. Okay, well, they're all. Don't feel like you have to have them in the story, right? Where's the bad jump in logic that I make when I say that? But I'm sure Pete would disagree with that. So very stupid. Leave it. Sorry, my dog is just being a dog. Stupid. Stupid and stupid. As a general rule, slice of life has always been a more popular genre than action adventure. I don't even know if that's true. I don't. Why would you care if that's true? Why does it matter what's more popular? Write what you want to write. Oh man, I may have lost. Uh-oh. Give me a second to find. Oh, hey buddy. What are you doing? Did you eat something? Ugh. I lost my place because my dog distracted me because he's so cute. Aren't you the cutest baby ever? Now I have to scroll back down. Feature creep is a video game term. Stop using brain rot terms. Come on, buddy. Lie down. Oh, it's okay. You're a good bubba. Let me move that for you. Scoot over here. What are you doing? Alright. Feature creep, stupid. D&D alignments are terrible metrics for character design. Again, they're a tool. If you want to use it just to get a rough idea, then do it. When writing LGBT characters, stay as far away from Rocky Horror Picture Show? No, fuck off. What? Not you, buddy. I love you. The Q slur. Shut up. Nobody cares. Rape is an unforgivable crime more so than killing. Killing can potentially be justified without becoming a villain. Rape cannot. There's a difference between justification and forgiveness and redemption. Sex scenes are never necessary. That's not true. I mean, and if you want to pull the Pete card, you can be like, oh, well, no scenes are necessary. You're just writing them. You're just, oh, whoops. You're just writing the scenes to be necessary. You're the one who chose that. It's not actually necessary. Strong characters can still cry. No shit. Peak TV, I don't know what that means. Like Twin Peaks? I don't know if Pete would understand Twin Peaks. I don't know if I understand Twin Peaks. Addiction based storytelling relies on you going to fuck yourself. I don't care. 88 Sunk Cost Fallacy. Shows like Steven Universe, a children's show, and Game of Thrones, arguably not a children's show, would be cancelled by season 2. I don't know about that. Game of Thrones was a super popular book series before it became a TV series. And both of those really had quite strong desire to be continued. Because Game of Thrones is a well-known slice of life series. Slice of I actually haven't read Game of Thrones. I prefer my fantasy slightly different. I just couldn't get into it. I tried reading A Song of Fire and Ice or whatever, and I just didn't like it. I mentioned earlier, but I really like R. Scott Bakker. He's great. Lately, I've been reading nonfiction books about consciousness by Dennett and such. Anyway, again, Pete would probably die if he touched a book like that. 89. Hardcore fans will tell you that continuity is the most important thing. They're wrong. Who gives a shit? If you're writing like a small book, continuity is not going to be a pressing issue. 90. This is too political is a complaint only made by conservatives when a story acknowledges that non-white and non-straight people exist. This is so bad faith. This is so bad faith and so wrong. 91. The Little Mermaid and Cinderella are more feminist than Beauty and the Beast. Who, again, children's stories. 92. If you want to know when to change a trans character's pronouns, I don't. 93. As long as it isn't harmful or bigoted, go fuck yourself. I don't care. 94. Vampires/werewolves are not inherently LGBT coded, and doing so is an example of othering. I guess I agree, but like not because it's othering. I just think of them as meaning other things. They work better as metaphors for aristocracy in 2024. Aristocracy is a thing people talk about. And predators, respectively, than as the underclass. I think this shows a very, very shallow understanding of both vampires and werewolves. Werewolves, particularly, it upsets me to have it be reduced to just predators. Werewolves, my understanding of it has always been that it's a way to work with the struggle man has as being in between a beast and a god. I think is the classic conception of it. Man stuck between wall and freezer. No, beast and god. Stupid fucking search engines. Yeah, Nietzsche. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss. And I feel like that's really a big part of what werewolves are, striving to be this better person, this higher thing, and and not be weighed down by the more base parts of yourself, but sometimes feeling overwhelmed by it to the point that you lose the higher parts of yourself. I feel like that's a much more important part of what a werewolf is than being a predator. Because often werewolves are unwilling, just as humans are unwilling as to, the state of our existence. We're just sort of thrust into it the way a lot of werewolf victims and subsequent werewolves are. Vampires, I agree, aristocracy, they were originally conceived as like draining the lifeblood of the citizenry and such to enrich themselves. The way that they are immortal is and passing through blood is more like bloodlines rather than like a specific individual living. But I totally understand where that's coming from. However, these days it can be used to look at like addiction. That's an interesting way to go with it. So it's stupid, and authors can do whatever they want. If they want to use it as a metaphor for gayness, werewolves could be like AIDS or something. I don't know. 95. Some of the best stories ever made were written as an act of spite. Citation fucking needed. Though maybe Count of Monte Cristo could be a story about an act of spite or revenge more specifically, but I don't know if Pete knows what the Count of Monte Cristo is. Any system of government, with the exception of fascism, can exist in a positive or negative context. Go fuck yourself. Stop arbitrarily restricting things. What about Starship Troopers, a work that is critical of fascism, yet displays it in a positive light? Such nuance escapes Pete. Lesbian still. Why is he obsessed with lesbians? Sorry, they. Lesbian still on good terms with ex-boyfriend from before coming out is a really cute friendship trope. Okay, that's a tip for what? Who cares? The only real difference between an extremely close platonic relationship and a romantic relationship is what the people involved choose to call it. No. No. Understand boundaries. Respect boundaries. Best friends are not something that should ever be prefixed with the word just. No. Respect boundaries. What are you talking about? Normalize friends saying I love you to each other. I like that. I actually have been thinking, or I haven't been thinking about it a lot recently because it's already been processed in my mind. But maybe a couple years ago, I don't know why it took me so long, but I really had the revelation of there's this situation in my life where there's someone who I care tremendously for and about. And I never said to him explicitly how I felt. And he's fine. We just haven't spoken in years. And I feel a lot of regret over not having told him really how I feel. And so now I try and make sure that I let the people who I care about know that I care about them, because I don't know when is the last time I'm going to be able to do it, and I don't want to regret that again. I don't want to be in a situation where it's like I wish I would have told them how much I care. And so I think it's good to normalize friends saying I love you to each other, but I think it's also important to normalize understanding why that's important, if that makes sense. 100. If you write a 100 tweet long thread of writing advice, you are a huge loser. Whatever, self-deprecation to be like, oh, please don't hurt me for my shitty tips. Oh, and tips and rules are two different words. Well, kind of hard when you say always in your tips. I have wasted 18 minutes of my life talking about this shit. And I am maybe just that little bit closer to killing myself. I think that will be more enjoyable than reading this list. Really, I think it'll be more enjoyable than most things I engage in, considering how little how little joy I get out of life these days. Well, these days. It's been like this for decades, but that is definitely not here. Maybe it's there. I don't know. I'm going to stop talking. My voice is probably dry and cracky and creaky because I have not talked this long for ever in my life. Possibly.